That's one thing that I think inspires me, is wanting to inspire other people. So if other people see that, okay, so for instance, if me and you start tweeting about a sport, then other girls will think, oh, okay, well, why can't we tweet that?
Looked at my CV and thought, she's done all these things, but she doesn't have a degree. And that's what made me stand out. Of course, I'm not saying that having a degree is bad. What I'm saying is that if you don't have one and you're trying to get into sports, if you do these extra things, you've got just as good as of a chance of being noticed. Welcome back to episode 9 of Breaking Barriers, and today I am joined by somebody who will be becoming a part of our ranks very soon, and that is Rhianna Davies. Rhianna, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I was quite interested to hear about you joining, especially since you're a big Wales fan, aren't you?
I am, yes. And
so,
a Cardiff fan as well.
Oh, and a Cardiff fan. You've been supporting them like sort of since you were young, or is it a recent thing?
Yeah, so I've been watching Cardiff since I was 5. Wow. So quite a while now.
That's pretty interesting. We've got quite a mix of people, I think, now in the TotalSport group. We've got a few Liverpool fans, we've got some sort of La Liga fans, but it's always nice to have a bit of a mix, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of mix, you mentioned there that you're a big Wales fan and Cardiff City fan. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So I'm Rhianna. I'm 19. I'm from South Wales. I'm currently in my second year of university. I study sports journalism at the University of South Wales. Like I said, I support Cardiff and I support Wales. My grandfather is actually the reason for my love of football. Yeah, so he took me to my first game when I was 5 and I was hooked, and I've been going ever since.
Just never looked back.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's really kind of influenced you, haven't you? Because you've mentioned that you study sports or sports journalism at university. Is this sort of based on sort of the love that you got from your grandfather in terms of being introduced to sport, or is it something that you really wanted to pursue yourself?
In all honesty, I didn't know I wanted to become to do sports journalism until I'd say halfway through my first year of doing A levels. I always wanted to be a history teacher,
really?
But then
Wow.
I thought but as much as I enjoyed studying history and GCSE and A levels, I wasn't really passionate about it. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, I want to be passionate about it so I can work hard and achieve. And I've always had a passion for football, so that's definitely what inspired me to do sports journalism.
It's interesting you say that about how sort of you had to really kind of tell yourself that actually it's not history that you wanted to do, but sports. And I think often as women in the industry, we get shoehorned into things a lot. If you're good at something, that means you should pursue it, because otherwise you're not going to get an opportunity to really excel. But it's really interesting that you stuck with sports and you wanted to push on with that.
Yeah, definitely. I just think if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to want to do it for the rest of your life. And I knew that I wanted to do this, basically. As soon as I sat down and thought to myself, no, okay, this is what I want to do.
And so you're doing sports journalism at university. Are you doing anything outside of that to facilitate your love for sports, or any sort of, for example, another podcast or outside work?
I have a podcast within my university circle. It's called Football Fashionistas, and it's just basically about the different trends in football, really. And we do speak quite a bit about women as well. We recently did a podcast on that. I also have a website where if I write anything, it goes on there.
So you've got quite a few things going. Interesting you mentioned the website. So I have my own Medium sort of account, and I do a lot of content on there. I also have another podcast aside from this one, which is based on women's football as well, which is based around Chelsea Women's Football Club. It's quite interesting that we both sort of one of those people that have all these extra women's football things going on the outside.
Is Chelsea who you support, or
which Chelsea team?
Either women's or men's.
No, definitely the women's team. This is the thing, right? I support the women's Chelsea team, but everyone's like, well, why don't you support the men's team? It's like you often sort of get pushed into that just because you're supporting one team. But I really enjoy watching the WSL football in general, and I cover like all the players. It's quite interesting to do that.
That's amazing. Do you see a lot of difference between the men's game and the women's game, whether that's behind the scenes or just the players in general?
A lot of people sort of have the normal, perspective that women's football is less skilled or not like good enough, or not physical enough. But it's not the case. There are loads of different players and loads of different skills. The team that I follow, for example, Chelsea, they're right up there in terms of they won the league last year. They've won the league two times before. They've got Fran Kirby, who's currently in the form of her life. They've got Sam Kerr, who is one of the biggest players in world football. They've got Pernilla Harder, who they signed for a record fee, and she's just won the Champions League. So I feel like a lot of times people don't realise the level of skill and the competition that women's football has. I would say it's not as physical, but where it's not physical, it's more technical. Like it's made up for that in that sense. You might see a lot of men's football where it's like a lot of tackles and sort of maybe the fact that more physical players as well. But although that's not present here, you have it made up in different ways, and I think people aren't um, people aren't privy to that because they don't perceive it. They just assume things about women's football. But I think the more you watch it, the more you understand that it's got its own niches and its own strengths, and it's just as good to watch really on any platform, if that's the WSL or the NWSL or even like something like the World Cup.
Yeah, there definitely is a stigma around women's football, but it's nice to know that other people do show interest in it as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot in terms of not just like women in the industry, but I'm seeing a lot of men kind of now start to cover it. You see a lot of analysis in newspapers. I think after the World Cup that we had a few years ago, it's really been on an upwards trend. More people are realizing that there's definitely not just talent and quality to cover and report, but also there's a reason to support and fund it. And I don't think we've had that before.
So, how long have you been in the industry, kind of?
Well, I started sort of well, I didn't go to university, that's the thing, so I kind of had an extra few years. I did do 1 year of English at City University, but I realised, just like you actually, that English wasn't for me. I was good at English, I've always been good at English, I've been good at English since I was young. I've never got a bad mark ever, I've got mostly um, A stars, A star pluses, but I realised that I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to do sports. Um, and so I decided that if I wanted to do sports, then I was going to have to do loads of work experience and free and unpaid work. And fortunately, I was very lucky that in college, one of my teachers had a brother who worked at the Independent, and he knew that I wrote about sports because I showcased it a lot in school. I'd write about things, and so I got my foot in that way. And then from there on, it was just more work experience for a few years before I got my first job. So I would say since 19, but when I was sort of 16 and 17, I was also doing unpaid work at different newspapers, and I think that really got me forward quite a bit because I think in this industry specifically, it's not so much like you could have a degree. There are people who have journalistic degrees like yourself as well, but more so what's important is experience. People want to see how you develop and work in this environment because it's fast paced, it's intense, it's something that you need to show that you have experience in. So I think the stuff that we're doing here in podcasts and the stuff that you're doing yourself, I think those are the important things to do. So I was doing that for a while, and now I've been working. I currently work for Squawka at the moment, which is like an online football website, and we cover all sorts of content there as well.
I think it's amazing how we both show like the different sides of getting into the industry. Like, I didn't, obviously, I know that work experience is the most important thing, but I never thought of not studying it at university, if that makes sense. So it's nice, it's good to see that you've managed to get your foot in the door in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. A lot of people assume that you need to go down that route, otherwise there's no other way for you to to progress. And I think there's a lot of pressure when you tell people that if you don't go to university, then that's it. Even though there are apprenticeship schemes available, like work experience things that are available, it's interesting because the first job I ever got, which was at William Hill, the reason why I got that job is because my application stood out. That I was the only one who didn't have a degree, and the person who was hiring looked at my CV and thought, she's done all these things, but she doesn't have a degree, and that's what made me stand out. Of course, I'm not saying that having a degree is bad. What I'm saying is that if you don't have one and you're trying to get into sports, if you do these extra things, you've got just as good as of a chance of being noticed.
I think that'll definitely inspire the people who say do have a degree but in something completely different, and then it just shows that if you work hard at something and that you know you want to do, there are other ways to achieve your goals.
Yeah, and I think especially as women as well, like if you've got a degree in something, it doesn't sort of mean that you can't do anything else. I think often, as I mentioned before, we get quite shunned in our specific departments or degrees. You feel like you can't do more because we don't have the same opportunities available. And I think that's really sad to hear because I think it demotivates quite a lot of people. But the important thing is that there are so many opportunities to get in, and even if you are like in a complete different, as you mentioned, complete different um, way of life, like if you're like a lawyer or a doctor, I think the most important thing is if you've got a passion for it, you can find a way to get in. Like if you really want it bad enough.
I think that's something that needs to be taught in school, really, because when I did my A levels in sixth form, so I spent most of my time in school, and it's always drilled into you that you have to go to university. University is the only option. They definitely should say that it's not the end of the world if you don't have a degree. You can still do what you want to do.
I think that obviously there are certain things that you do need a degree for, like sort of medical things. You
Yeah.
need that for a law degree, but at the same time, I think like you mentioned, there's too much pressure on people trying to come through the industry. I think a lot of that is also reflected online, like on social media platforms. You see a lot of people that push the same thing, like you can't write about this or you can't do this because you don't have enough experience or you're not meant to be doing it. I've gotten a lot of that before for not having a degree. Like where is your experience like? And I think we don't, like you mentioned, we don't talk enough about that also in a professional sense because if you know, like if you've written about something, you've got the experience, it shouldn't mean that you can't sort of pursue that. Yeah, so on that sort of social media element, I think it gives us a nice segue. I was going to ask you about your social media presence because obviously as a student of journalism, I see that you write a lot about sports and you comment a lot about sports as well.
Yeah, I'm very vocal on Twitter. I do tweet a lot, but the majority of it is about Cardiff or about Wales. Um, but I think for me, that's kind of the route I want to go down is the social media. So maybe working for an organisation or a club. But yeah, I am very vocal on social media.
So you definitely want to use your platform sort of for going down that social media route. And in terms of that, do you feel as if social media companies are doing enough to really help women in online flourish?
Yes and no. I think some are and some are not. There's definitely a room for improvement, but you do see a lot more women on social media now commenting and tweeting about football or sport in general. And I think that is something that it definitely inspires me. If I see a woman tweeting about football, then I think, okay, well, if she can do it, then I can do it as well.
Yeah, that's the important thing about having sort of other women online who are doing the same thing. You surround yourself with that kind of stuff. It makes it easier to kind of push through the people who say that you can't do something or that as a
Yeah.
woman you shouldn't really be like tweeting about sports.
That's one thing that I think inspires me is wanting to inspire other people. So if other people see that, okay, so for instance, if me and you start tweeting about a sport, then other girls will think, oh, okay, well, why can't we tweet that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I think um, that we people need to do more of because I think the more we do that, the more that we can show people that social media and being involved in sport isn't just sort of pigeonholed for men and for people who are more experienced. Because, like you mentioned, if you've got a passion, you should be free to write about it. I mean, that's what social media is. It's a freedom to tweet and to post and to upload.
And for a while, I was so nervous to tweet
Really.
about football because I think so many people have their opinions, and football fans, especially, have strong opinions and they're not afraid to disagree with you. And I think that's one thing you need to be aware of is don't be afraid. If you know you're not necessarily right, but if you believe in what you're saying, then don't be afraid to post or say what you have to say. Don't be afraid of what other people are going to say about it because at the end of the day, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it, whether and not everybody is going to agree with what you say. And I think that's one thing that I struggled with a lot at the start.
It sounds like you've come quite a long way from, from the university to the podcast work and now being more vocal online. And now you've decided to come and be a part of TotalSport.
Yeah, it's definitely about pushing myself out of my comfort zone because I was very shy growing up and I didn't like. I was thinking this the other day. If you had asked me to join last year, I probably would have said no. But I know I need to take the opportunities because the more opportunities you take, the more they will come up and the more your confidence will grow. And that's the only way you're going to improve.
That's exactly it. I think I was kind of similar in the sense I wasn't as nervous as you, but I was definitely more anxious and worried about whether people thought I was being more upfront or they might not like the things I posted. But like you said, I found that the things I did upload, people were giving quite positive feedback, and you have to learn from other people that way as well, because people are always more experienced than you. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you get noticed, and that's the most important thing, especially as a woman. You want to get noticed. You want to find your way to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of finding your way to the top, are you excited about what is in store for breaking barriers and your involvement in it?
Yeah, I honestly can't wait. I think this is the biggest thing that I've done, and it's definitely going to put my name out there more. And I can't wait to get started properly. And yeah,
Have you seen any of the ones that we've already done so far with other people?
yes, I have, and they are very good. And it's something, it's positivity around women in sport, and obviously being a female, that's something I want to promote. And
That's perfect. We're absolutely excited to see you involved, and I'm really glad actually to have another woman on board because I've just been the sole woman for a long while, and as amazing as the guys are, it's nice to have that presence, and it's also nice to be able to push forward now with our sort of plan for the future with breaking barriers. So I think that wraps us up. Can you tell us where we can find you online for anyone who's hoping to kind of get a hold of your account?
yeah, so on Twitter, it's Davis with an X on the end. And this is the same on Instagram. And my blog is in my bio on Twitter as well. So
Perfect. So if you guys want to look her up, then please do that and please read her content and please keep your eyes peeled because me and Rhianna are going to have a lot of work to do and we're going to have a lot of amazing women, including ourselves, on the pod in the future.